Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Lasagna. This is episode number 286. And in this episode, we're here to look back at the week that was in the NFL, look back at all the games that happened in week 2, and look back at my takeaways, my winners and losers, and look ahead at the week as to come in week number 3 in the second edition of our 2025 NFL Weekly Roundup, aka our week in review. So there was some crazy wild games that happened this second week, and it's only been the second week. We're just 2 weeks down, 16 more to go. So yeah, the craziness has already begun. And yes, there's also some unfortunate things that has happened in the past week. And I don't mean like, unfortunate. I mean like health reasons. Unfortunate, but we'll get into that in this review of week 2. But before we get started, for those of you that are new here, listening or watching to Very Cold Lasagna on the YouTube side of things, make sure you subscribe, tap the notification bell, smash the like button, leave your comments down below, leaving your takes on this past week in the National Football League. And even if you're not knowledgeable or in a filthy casual, you can always comment down below. And if you're listening to the podcast, wherever you get them, whether it's on Apple or Spotify, make sure you rate and review the show so you'll leave me some feedback. And follow me on social media on X and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna. So that being said, let's get into the week that was, week number 2 in the National Football League, starting with Thursday Night Football, only on Amazon Prime Video for that $15.99 a month, or however much Amazon is charging you for that bang for your buck, as the Packers took on the Commanders in a key pivotal NFC showdown. But it certainly didn't feel that way for most of this game because that Packer defense that was so crushing on the Lions last week, it certainly made its presence again on Jane Daniels and the Commanders. They shut them down. They shut them down for much of the game, and they even shut down their comeback attempt in another strong win over Washington, 27-18. Looking at Washington in this game, they looked very unprepared. Whether it was the coaching staff that couldn't respond to anything that the Packers, especially their defense, was throwing at them. Jane Daniels, he had nowhere to go. All of his receivers were clogged up. He had nowhere to run because he's a scrambler after all. But the defense was just pretty much ready for him. And on the other side of the fence, you look at their own defense, failing to cover up an offense that, it still has things to work on, but they had plenty of opportunities to run up the scoreboard, but it still felt like they were torching their butts. So they came out of this game not looking pretty good, looking very unprepared to play on a Thursday night. And that's not even the worst part of it, coming out of the Thursday night for Washington. Meanwhile, you look at the Green Bay Packers, another dominating game, despite what the score says. But yeah, the Packers, they came away from this game dominating another playoff contender from last year and a supposed one coming into this year. But yeah, you look at that defense, that front seven that consists of the likes of Rashawn Gary, Devontae Wyatt, Quay Walker, and now you got Micah Parsons in there. I mean, it's too early to say, but I'd say after 2 weeks, yeah, they're a legit force to be dealing with. Again, there are some questions about their secondary still, but I'd say the front seven is a pretty much a big deal now. The offense, it's still got a lot of work to do with Jordan Love, but he led some nice scoring drives with 3 of them ending in touchdowns. So we're still 2 weeks in though, but the youth movement that the Packers have, that they've been roster building for the last few years, it's really been starting to take shape, at least for the most part. Now let's see what they can do on the road for the next 2 games. And yeah, I'm intrigued how these Packers will do in these next couple of games. So moving on to the Sunday slate, starting with the early morning portion, as the Baltimore Ravens took on the Cleveland Browns in an AFC North showdown, as Lamar Jackson in the Ravens in the fourth quarter broke it open thanks to 2 touchdowns and a scoop and score by linebacker Roquan Smith. And yeah, the Ravens pounded the skid marks. They used their trade. The Browns dog pound. I guess you could say it. Terrible pun, by the way. But anyway, they pounded the skid marks 41-17 in the fourth quarter. The Browns, this is pretty much where they're at with right now, especially with Joe Flacco at the quarterback position. Joe Flacco will kind of move the offense, but at this rate, at his age, he can't get out of pressure, as indicated on key third downs in this game, especially with the relentless defense like the Ravens. They're pretty much capped with where they're at with Flacco, but it'll be an eye to watch where and when Kevin Stefanski will make a change at the QB position, and whether it'll be to Dylan Gabriel or to Shadur. And I'm a little surprised that Shadur Sanders has been a non-factor and not been mentioned since several months ago. And meanwhile, for the Baltimore Ravens, this was pretty much the bounce back game that they need after, choking one away, a very winnable one in Buffalo. But you know what? Sometimes letting your anger out on a much lower opponent than you is what they needed after self-destructing the week prior. But obviously, a real test comes around when on the Monday night this coming week, they host Jared Goff and the Lions, who also bounced back this past Sunday. But we'll talk about that a little later because we have the other AFC North team in the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the all-elite Jacksonville Jaguars, as Jake Browning had to step in for Joe Burrow in the second quarter. We'll talk about why that was. But even with some issues, he managed to come in clutch with a goal line lunge touchdown with very little seconds left to go. That gave way for the Bengals to win this one 31-27. Let's talk about the Jaguars first in this one because they had every single chance to win this game. They dominated most of this game over the Bengals, but for whatever reason, they got full of themselves and they started committing so many unnecessary mistakes. For example, penalties like Travis Hunter's pass interference late in the game. Like, you can't do that. And then Trevor Lawrence throwing a red zone interception on fourth down. That could have been a touchdown had he not thrown it into a very tight window. And then multiple dropped passes. So for the Jaguars, it's one thing for a team to settle into a new head coach, but it's another to make too many mistakes to piss him off to the point where he was like visibly getting pissed at Trevor Lawrence for, Lawrence, pushing him to the side, and now he has to collect the team together post game to, rally the troops, and the Jaguar social media has to put it out there. Meanwhile, for the Bengals, they came back in this game. They managed to win with Jake Browning. That's good, but obviously it comes with a high price. They and their fans probably didn't want to hear this about Joe Burrow. It's the worst case scenario for their quarterback that, in case you were wondering, he left in the second quarter on a sack by Eric Armstead. He suffered a toe injury that unfortunately is going to require surgery. So that's the worst case scenario. So pretty much the worser injury that Brock Purdy suffered, except that Brock Purdy doesn't need surgery, but Joe Burrow does. And apparently, I'm no doctor, but I'm just going off by what the insiders like Rappaport and Schefter go by. It's a 3-month recovery timeline. So oof, just a big oof if you're the Bengals, who everybody thought in Cincy thought, this was finally going to be the time where the Bengals were, at least somewhat gonna try to rise back up in the North. But just when you thought that way, even with their shitty defense, they get this absolutely worst news. And dependent on whether the Bengals will be are still in contention by mid-December, which would be the timeline that Burrow would be cleared to return. Would they even be in contention by that point? So a lot of unanswered questions for Cincinnati. Then we had a barn burner in Dallas as the Cowboys took on the Giants in a very sudden shootout. And that went down to the very last wire as Russell Wilson, he threw a moon bomb to Malik Nabers with just 30 seconds left in the game, and that seemed to put it away. But Dak Prescott got his very good kicker, Brandon Aubrey, in position to kick a midfield field goal to send the game into the extra period. And yeah, Dak Prescott took advantage of a stupid Russell Wilson interception, and he got his kicker again into good field goal range to win this game 40-37 in the extra period. Now, normally I would talk about one team first and the other team second, but when it comes to this game, both of these teams, their defenses are garbage, as indicated when you watch this game, whether you got the spirits in full or you just pulled up a highlight reel wherever you got it from. But these defenses were garbage in this game. How much yardage they gave up and how bad each team's coverages were, and despite how mid both quarterbacks are. So it's a little surprising that these defenses gave up so much. And as continue on with both teams, I mean, Dak Prescott, he continued to bounce back from his injury. I mean, he surprisingly gave the Eagles a challenge last week. I mean, but even against a bad Giants team, he still couldn't put them away until the extra period, because Russell Wilson, surprisingly, he surprised everyone, even in defeat. So yeah, that's kind of surprising there, but still an entertaining contest nonetheless. Unfortunately, what wasn't entertaining was some good old-fashioned Bears football, because the Detroit Lions obliterated the Chicago Bears, taking their anger out from last week's embarrassment in Green Bay, and took it into their home opener by laying a 50 bomb on the Bears and their old friend Ben Johnson, beating him 52-21. And yeah, for those good old Chicago Bears, it's Bears football season again. Yeah, the downward swing from that week 1 choke job carried over to the next week. Caleb Williams, after a good first touchdown drive, made the same old mistakes of just trying to make too many things happen and holding onto the ball too long. Eventually, sooner rather than later, that lead widened for the Lions. But it was the defense, though. It was the defense that completely sold out, because no one, whether it was the front seven or the secondary, could keep the entire Lions offense in check. They were just like letting Jared Goff in that offense run up the scoreboard. And unfortunately, that falls on Dennis Allen's play calling, because really, for all that the Lions are doing to you, like, you couldn't adjust. Seriously. So for a team that's supposed to be revamped with this supposed new offensive creative guru, they're facing a lot of serious questions as it now turns to a home game against the Cowboys that just went into a shootout with the Giants. Meanwhile, for the Lions, this was exactly the game that you needed. This was the Lions team that a lot of people are used to seeing under Dan Campbell. Now, granted, the Bears defense isn't the Packers, but the Dan Campbell and crew will have to take what they can get. That included a better performance all around, including from Jared Goff in that offensive line, the offense just being more explosive in general, and that defense heralded by Kelvin Shepherd playing a lot better in shattering the Bears. But they'll face a much tougher team on the road in Lamar Jackson, the Ravens, next week on Monday night. So let's see if they can carry that momentum going into this Monday. So then we had an AFC East showdown in South Beach as the Patriots took on the Dolphins, and things got a little interesting towards the very end of the game as Malik Washington and Antonio Gibson traded punt and kick return touchdowns late in the fourth quarter. And New England managed to stop the Dolphins from making a comeback to win that game 33-27. So when you look at the Patriots, it was a much better and productive day for Drake May, shaking a little bit off of the struggles that he had last week as he continues to learn the system under Josh McDaniels. He looked much more poised and comfortable for a lot of the day in running that offense. Also made some smarter decisions, in my opinion, mostly, including 2 nice first half touchdowns. But they're still playing to work on for Drake May as he gets, as like I said, continues to get comfortable. But this was more encouraging than last week. So yeah, you shouldn't overreact to the week prior, but also don't overreact to this week. But this was encouraging. Meanwhile, if you're Tua and the Dolphins, I mean, they did much better to start, but what the fuck was that ending? What was that ending? Like, seriously, you had this players only meeting this past week because of the embarrassment in the Colts game. And sure, it translated to a better offensive performance, but Tua still made some dumb dick decisions that cost Miami this game. Like, seriously, you throw a wide ass interception to a wide ass defender on 4th down. And then you're the game on the line in the red zone. You couldn't find anybody in the end zone. You're like just 20 yards out. All you need is 20 yards to the end zone, get a touchdown, tie the game up, and all you has to do is make a field goal. But no, you get sacked. Your ass got sacked. But the interception was, in my opinion, the worst offense because he had a wide open receiver in number 89, but he decided to throw it dead in the rights into the defender. Like, what was he thinking? Like, why did he do that? This Dolphins team, man, is like a very curious case. Like, did they just give up like right away? Well, all I can say is good luck in Buffalo this Thursday. That's all I could say. Meanwhile, in the big hard, you had my 49ers taking on the New Orleans Saints. And it was very tense. And I'll talk more about that in my 49ers weekly roundup in the next episode. As my injury-riddled Niners, they had to hold off a feisty Spencer Rattler and the Saints, but they managed to get it done thanks to a strip sack by Bryce Huff that stopped the Saints from pulling off a potential upset, and they won 26-21. For my 49ers, this was a very stressful, but in the end, a gutsy win. I kind of looked at it initially as a 50-50 win, but it was pretty much a team effort with a couple injuries to key players and pretty much a lot more injuries to key players. And you're missing Brock Purdy, you're missing George Kittle. You had Trent Williams and Fred Warner go in and out of the game, and you also lost Kyle Juszczyk to a concussion. But nonetheless, the team put together one of their early strong performances in spite of the injuries, even if it wasn't pretty. I will give credit where credit is due to Mac Jones doing a very solid job in this game. But the defense especially did good in making very big game-changing plays in crunch time, like the sack by Bryce Huff. And the kicker, Eddie Pinheiro, was Dinero for the most part in his debut. So maybe they got something there. But we'll see next week. Meanwhile, for the New Orleans Saints, they fought hard in this game, but it still didn't end up in the win column. But what I took away from this game is that, sure, Spencer Rattler is not the answer at quarterback, but while he may not be the answer, he will make teams work for their wins, dependent on the week. But hey, at least Rattler ran the offense much smoother. He got the ball out much faster. He took more risks this week, so that's a little bit encouraging for Kellen Moore. So then we had another division showdown as the Buffalo Bills took on the New York Jets in the gangrene side of the Meadowlands. But unfortunately for the Jets, they suffered a gangrene beatdown at the hands of James Cook. He ran over the Jets with 2 touchdowns in the first half alone. And the Bills ran away with this one 30-10. And the Bills, they continued their momentum from their Sunday night comeback. Josh Allen, he didn't really have to do much other than run the offense as usual. But he decided to let others like James Cook. Yeah, bad pun. But week 2 was mainly about James Cook and the defense torturing Justin Fields and the Jets. But pretty much business as usual and cooking as usual. And now they turn their attention to another AC East matchup, this time in more prime time on Thursday night against the Dolphins. Only on Prime Video for that $16 a month, pal. Meanwhile, for Justin Fields and the Jets, this is a pretty disappointing follow-up act, especially from Justin Fields, because where the heck was the Justin Fields that we saw against the Steelers last week? This one looked outmatched. He looked scared. He threw a lot of bad passes, and the offense pretty much went nowhere. Like, did they even get past midfield at all? So this is like a complete 180. And I'll mention that in the fourth quarter that he didn't play for reasons I'll mention later. Then we had the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers in a very weird ending. I'd say not a weird ending, but a momentum swinger, because there was a botched kickoff return by the Steelers that led to the Seahawks getting a free touchdown. And that momentum swing led to them running away with this game 31-17 in favor of the Hawks. So, yeah, even with that free touchdown from the Seahawks, you look at this team and, Sam Darnold, he started off pretty slow, but in the end, he started to pick it up. He started to pick up steam with this new offense, staving off multiple sacks and 2 interceptions, and he overcame that to keep the offense moving and continue to establish his connections with Jackson Smith-Njigba and Agent Cooper Kupp, and a name that we didn't even hear last week against my Niners, rookie Torrey Horton. I'm surprised, we didn't even get to see him at all. But nonetheless, Darnold put on a pretty decent performance against a Steelers defense. Even with all the injuries, they were pretty tough on Darnold. Meanwhile, for the Steelers, man, what a special teams gaffe that was. That kickoff return, what the hell was that? What the heck was that, man? That essentially cost the Steelers the game. Sure, there were factors like Aaron Rodgers and the offense being neutered by the Seahawks defense, but this single gaffe, by whoever the returner was, not knowing the rules, because me being a filthy casual, sure, they wouldn't know the landing zone rules either. I would have cost them the game too, if you ask me. But still, you can't do that. You cannot do that. And yeah, that single gaffe cost the Steelers this game, and they could have been 2-0 in a game that they for the most part dominated, and yeah, it led to this instead. Then we had the LA Rams taking on the Tennessee Titans. It was a 50-50 for the most part, but in the fourth quarter, the Rams pulled away from Tennessee with a red zone touchdown from Matthew Stafford to Devontae Adams, and yeah, they slowly crept away from Tennessee, 33-19. This was a rebound performance from the Rams offense, even though it came slowly but surely. So other than a bad pick before the end of the first half, Stafford in the offense, it was a more decent showing that saw an efficient rushing attack and some more aerial offense from Stafford and company. For the Tennessee Titans, Ham Ward continued to show his worth as the number 1 overall pick, leading 3 scoring drives, one of which included a crazy touchdown before the end of the half to receiver Alec Ayomanor. I'm sorry for mispronouncing that. But they couldn't really pick up steam before the end of the third quarter. That was pretty much their cap, their ceiling right there. That was mainly because, the supporting cast really couldn't do anything, especially up front on the offensive line. So, yeah, this goes to show how much far the Tennessee Titans still have to go in building up this team. So then going to the late afternoon slate of games, we had the Cardinals taking on the Carolina Panthers. And the Cardinals were doing everything they can to give this one away. Even though they forced 2 turnovers to start the game and keeping the Kitties in blue in check. Bryce Young and the Panthers were about to pull back in this game until Calais Campbell sacked Bryce Young on the Panthers' final chance. And yeah, the Cardinals held them off 27-22, but oh my God. I'm going to talk about the Cardinals first because they showed shades of their usual late season collapses this early in the season. They'll start off strong, the defense forcing 2 turnovers and just generally keeping offenses in check. And that's impressive feat, for defense that was retooled in the offseason, getting those early turnovers, including on the very first snap of the game. And then you had Kyler in the offense scoring on 5 of 6 possessions as they continue to build their connection in their big four of Kyler, James Conner, Trey McBride, and then Marvin Harrison Jr. But just like in New Orleans, they let the Panthers hang around way too much because they got too laid back. So you can't have that next week when they face the Niners in a key division matchup between 2-0 teams. Like, even if they're facing Mac Jones, that's not going to fly. Whether it's against Brock Purdy or Mac Jones. Meanwhile, for the Carolina Panthers, I mean, sure, they almost came back in that game with Bryce Young, but you have to look prior to what happened in that comeback. Very poor showing from Bryce Young. He gave away 2 easy turnovers. Like I said, one at the very first snap of the game, and he was just like whiffing passes left and right, all while being in duress. So don't be surprised if Dave Canales has to make a quarterback change this early in the season again if Bryce Young continues his bad habits. Then we have the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Denver Broncos in I say a key pivotal AFC showdown that could come with some implications down the line. And this one came down to the wire. It was a shootout-esque, but one that came down to the wire, and one that Denver could have easily won, but they made a special teams error, and that allowed the Colts to win this one. And kicker Spencer Schrader exchanged this missed field goal for a game-winning one because of that error, and the Colts won it 29-28. So for the Indianapolis Colts, Daniel Jones has surprisingly played. I'm not sure, pretty good. I'd say he played pretty good in the first 2 games. He's been pretty surprising with 2 near flawless games as a starter that have led to victories. And the offense has looked more energized under him. But I'm not going to overreact just yet. I'm not going to say, oh, Daniel Jones, maybe he is the quarterback that the Colts are looking for. But I'm not going to say that just yet because it's just 2 games into the season. There's still a long way to go. The Colts still have their first game on the road this Sunday against Cam Ward and the Titans. Let's see if Daniel Jones can carry that momentum over into Tennessee this Sunday. Meanwhile, for the Denver Broncos, like, man, they had this win in the palm of their hands, and Dondrea Tillman, the linebacker, he ripped it away from them, single-handedly ripped it away from them with trying to get leverage to block the field goal. Like, you can't have that. You can't have that. And why am I thinking about this? Because why did they take away from that? Because I know it's still way too early to think about this, but if the Denver Broncos are in playoff contention, let alone contention for the division come late November, early December, and we get down to the numbers and stats and all the checkers and chesses, like, they're going to think about this one and think that, why are we not AFC West champions? Why are we not like in a spot where we need to be? Well, you look back at this game and you know why. Then we had the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Kansas City Chiefs in a rematch of Super Bowl 59 and Super Bowl 57. And this one got a little tense. It was kind of a mixed bag of sorts in their rematch. But there's a critical moment in this game. After throwing an end zone interception, Patrick Mahomes responded with a long bomb touchdown to Tyquan Thornton that cut the game down to 20-17. But it wasn't enough for the Chiefs to come back and either tie these things up or take the lead, because Jalen Hurts and the Eagles pushed their way to burn the clock and seal the win to 20-17. So even though the Eagles won this game, they still look out of sorts on pretty much both sides of the ball. Jalen Hurts, sure, he's still pretty much managing this game, managing this team to wins, but he's still not doing anything out of the ordinary. I mean, sure, it's fine, but the passing attack could be much better. And Saquon still, it's all right. But he's still Saquon, like when he matters. But the defense, especially though, it's a little concerning. The front four didn't have as much. Well, the front four didn't have as much issues pressuring Patrick Mahomes, but the secondary does concern me, in my opinion, because they continue to get gashed by opposing receivers, even when it was against an older Travis Kelce and a depleted Chiefs receiving core. You're going up against a depleted Chiefs receiving core that doesn't really have any names of value. Like when they don't have Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, and you're going up against third tier receivers, and you're still getting gashed. Like, how are you getting beat by those? So another corner and safety really need to step up to help Cooper DeJean because his own wingman, who's supposed to be his second guy, Quinyon Mitchell, he's been off to a very slow start. Meanwhile, you have the Kansas City Chiefs. Man, they're 0-2 for the first time under Patrick Mahomes. Some of it is Mahomes' fault, but the supporting cast is not really helping him either because the absence of Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy, as well as Kelsey's age really showing, is limiting how much Mahomes can do. There are just too many missed passes from his reserves, and while Mahomes is trying to make the most of it, again, too many missed opportunities. And also the ground game never really got going, and his offensive line also failing him when it matters most. So the Chiefs, they at least have an opportunity to get their first win against a still bad Giants team that almost got the upset win over the Cowboys. But hey, you never know. Even under the bright lights of Sunday night against Russell Wilson and the Giants, you never know what can happen. Speaking of Sunday night, the Atlanta Falcons took on the Minnesota Vikings in, I don't know what you can make of it. Either a defensive battle, sloppy quarterback play, you name it. But the Falcons defense shut down any hopes of another JJ McCarthy showcase/comeback, despite a quiet night from their own quarterback, Michael Penix Jr., with the scoring coming from 5 field goals and a late Tyler Algier touchdown as the Falcons shut down the Vikings 22-6. Yeah, pretty much most of this night was all about the Falcons defense as they played a complete shutdown game. And yeah, it was kind of impressive for the first 2 weeks for that Falcons defense. They couldn't finish the job last week against Baker Mayfield and the Bucs, but this week they made sure that wasn't the case. They made sure to put the finishing touches on JJ McCarthy. In the end, they got 6 sacks, 3 forced fumbles on JJ McCarthy, including one that they recovered. So pretty much encouraging signs for this defense that has been a big issue, a big red flag in the last couple of seasons. And this is a defense that has a mix of promising young players and some veteran ones as well. So this defense, if they continue to keep this up, hey, who knows? Maybe they can continue to be a big factor to help offset Michael Penix Jr.'s continued development. Meanwhile, for the Minnesota Vikings, this is pretty much the opposite effort of what happened on Monday night. Maybe they didn't have the same follow-up momentum that the Bills had on that comeback win. So yeah, this is a more humbling game for JJ McCarthy. That Falcons defense really got to him all game. McCarthy looks scared to throw. You can find open receivers like Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. He also lost 2 starting offensive linemen that made things even worse for him. And yeah, that didn't really help him when he also had the worst news come for him a day later. So we'll talk about that in just a bit. But yeah, not exactly the best showing for JJ McCarthy in his second game as a starter. Then we have Monday Night Football, which had 2 games on Monday night as it tried to kill WWE Monday Night Raw on Netflix, which, yeah, deserved. Anyway, the Tampa Bay Bucks took on the Houston Texans in the first game. Nick Chubb's 20-yard touchdown run ended a defensive stalemate, but unfortunately for the Texans, couldn't quite put away the Bucks because Baker Mayfield broke the Texans' hearts with a methodical 2-minute drill that was capped up by Rachaad White's goal line game winner as the Bucks beat the Texans 20-19 in a grinder. Man, Baker Mayfield continuing to show his worth as the Bucks' long-term quarterback. I mean, I had my doubts. It's just a matter of, the Bucks getting him some more help, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But Monday continued to indicate that, he's pretty much the guy. I mean, sure, maybe it's too early to say that. Maybe it's like a kind of a hot take, hot opinion to say that, but he makes the plays that matters most, for the most part. But he just needs more help, like young help on the defensive side of the ball. It's too old on that side. Meanwhile, for the Houston Texans, they really continue to struggle out of the gate and struggle protecting CJ Stroud. And now Stroud deserves some blame for badly missing on a lot of his passes, especially in the red zone. But man, that offensive line, it's just really bad. Like, they can't defend even the simplest of pressures from the Bucks front seven. Like, the Bucks aren't even blitzing, and yet they're still getting to CJ Stroud very quickly. And almost everyone on that Bucks front seven, they got at least one pressure on CJ Stroud. And the Texans running attack, it couldn't get going at all because the offensive line can't do shit. Other than that Nick Chubb touchdown that gave the Texans a brief lead. I wonder if the offensive line issues are remind you, Texans fans, of another quarterback that faced this issue years ago. But anyway, then we had the final Monday night game that capped off the week. That was week number 2, and that was the LA Chargers taking on the Las Vegas Raiders in Vegas, as the Charger defense forced 3 interceptions out of Geno Smith to get another division win, 20-9, as they shut down Geno. For the Chargers, again, liked what they did last week, and I liked, again, what they did this week with their aggressive play calling and play extensions on offense. Yeah, pretty much continued in pride time, although it started off a bit slow, but despite a gifted interception on defense. But Justin Herbert having another strong showing under Greg Roman's aggressive approach on early downs, and Herbert willing to chuck it downfield a lot more like they did against the Chiefs. So early promising signs as they take a 2-0 division lead already. Meanwhile, for the Raiders, like, what happened? What happened here is like it is pretty much very pass heavy. Like, they didn't give the ball to Ashton Jeanty barely at all in this game. And while even though he didn't do much, like he barely did anything in this game. You still got to keep feeding. You still got to at least try to feed him, and not have Geno Smith throw so much, even despite his limitations. And speaking of those limitations, because you had him throw so much, his limitations were exposed Monday night. Those being throwing checkdowns on the fly, putting receivers in danger deep in tight windows, as well as putting the ball in poor windows that resulted in those picks. So they got to have a better game plan when they go to Washington, where they might have to face a potentially Jaden Daniel-less Commanders. But again, you never know. So to put things on a bow for this episode, we're going to look at the winners and losers for week number 2. These are my winners and losers. You might have something different. So my winners, the Packers defense, shutting down Jaden Daniels in that offense, pretty much keeping them contained until their attempted garbage time comeback. Baker Mayfield leading the charge on the comeback against the Texans on Monday night, and pretty much breaking their hearts. And then running back James Cook getting 2 touchdowns in just the first half, and effectively sealing the game for Buffalo, like pretty much early against the Jets. And then looking at my losers for week number 2, Tua Tagovailoa, like he basically did like better, I guess, in that game against New England. But that interception pretty much killed the Dolphins' chances at winning that game, as well as the sack to end that game. And then JJ McCarthy, pretty much a bad showing to follow up that comeback victory over the Bears. And he was just an effective no-show under the bright lights of Sunday night against the Falcons. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers, like they played a decent solid game, and their defense dominated Sam Darnold and the Seahawks. the offense played well too, but it's just the special teams gap that let the game slip out of their hands. So then we go into week 3. Some of the things I'm looking at carefully, maybe not, not so carefully, as I'm going away for the weekend on a camping trip. So I'll try to these games look at these things the best I can. Going to week 3, where on a Sunday, where I'm not gonna be able to see most of these games, but I'll try to catch up on them. So the top 5 things I'm looking at going to week 3 is, well, obviously there were a few quarterback injuries throughout the league. Those being JJ McCarthy, Joe Burrow, and Justin Fields, as well as Jaden Daniels. So Justin Fields, he left week 2 with a concussion. He's going to have to pass concussion protocol if he wants to play against Tampa Bay this coming week. Jaden Daniels, he suffered an ankle injury in the game against the Packers. He at least has some extra time to heal, but not sure if Dan Quinn wants to hold him out against the Raiders and have Marcus Mariota play, but that remains to be seen. And in my opinion, maybe it's the best course of option because it's a long season and Jaden Daniels is your franchise quarterback and he does scramble a lot. So maybe it's the best case scenario. You don't want a RG3 situation again. But the biggest blows for obviously the quarterback positions for these teams is the Vikings and the Bengals, who ironically play each other this week. So they faced the biggest blows with McCarthy and Burrow facing long-term injuries. So McCarthy isn't as bad. He's not going to be out for too long with that high ankle sprain. It'll keep him out for at least a few, like 2 to 4 weeks at the most. But unfortunately for Joe Burrow, his season is mostly over. He's going to have to get surgery for that turf toe, like I said, that has torn ligaments, needs 3 months of rehab, and he was recently placed on injury reserve because of that. So, yeah, he's coming back mid-December, but by that point, with the Bengals being playoff contention by then, now sure, their backups, Carson Wentz and Jake Browning, they have starting experience at least to fill in, but it doesn't make the feeling better for their fans. I mean, in Jake Browning's case, he did fill in for Joe Burrow for several games in 2023, but still, it again doesn't make the feeling better for their fans. And then we look at how the teams like the Colts and the Packers, like how they continue their hot streaks, like especially the Colts, like they have been a surprise team so far. And let's see how they carry their momentum with their first road games of the year, especially those two in particular. So it'll be interesting how they do in their first games, home, 2 away from home. And then you look going back to the Commanders, those relentless injuries. They faced a lot of them on that Thursday night game. Austin Eckler out for the season with a torn Achilles. Deatrice Weiss, the linebacker, suffering a leg injury. Receiver Noah Brown having a groin injury. And obviously Daniels suffering that ankle injury. The good news, obviously, was having a few days extra to rest up. So essentially a mini bye as they prepare for the Raiders. Bad news is they now have to fill up holes for those injuries, especially for Austin Eckler, who's going to fill in for that running back spot. So for the teams that are 0-3, there is some high alert for certain teams like the Texans, the Bears, and the Dolphins. The Texans may have way less leeway due to being in the playoffs for the past 2 seasons as the AFC South champions. But the Bears, for a team that had such high expectations, like with the new head coach, with a new coaching staff, should be revitalized Caleb Williams. If they go 0-3, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, but it's still disappointing given high preseason expectations. And as for the Miami Dolphins, it also wouldn't be surprising, but still disappointing. And then there are a few key division matchups in this coming week, including my 49ers taking on the Arizona Cardinals. But the one X factor matchup to watch is the Broncos taking on the Chargers. They're not the Clippers right now, but the Chargers. They're already 2-0 in the division, and they can make it 3 straight this week. And this early in the year, if they can win this game against Denver, who really need to bounce back after letting that game against the Colts slip away. So if the Chargers can win this game, they can give themselves a major advantage over both Denver and especially the Kansas City Chiefs with the 3-0 division lead. But I'm just saying, though, just because they have a 3-0 division lead this early in the year, it doesn't always guarantee them a division title, let alone a playoff spot. See last year's Atlanta Falcons, for example. Now, I'm just saying. So those are the 5 things I'm looking for this coming week, heading into week 3. But let me know your guys' thoughts on what you're looking forward into week 3, and let me know your guys' takes on week number 2, what you took away from it, from whatever games you watched, on how your teams did. Let me know in the comments on YouTube, and send me a message on socials with your takes on week 2 games, and my social handle at Very Cold Lasagna. Sorry, I drew a blank for some reason. But anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of Very Cold Lasagna, episode number 286 of this icy yet spicy podcast for all your filthy casual takes, for all your filthy casual fans on the world of sports. I have been your host, Dylan Lasagna, and until the next one where we talk about my San Francisco 49ers, and until the next one where we talk about week 3 of the NFL season, I've been your host again, Dylan Lasagna, signing off, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.